Just 8 miles from the Athens city centre, this is Vrilisia, engulfed in smoke. Greece's worst wildfire this year spread into the capital's suburbs on Monday. Hundreds have been forced to evacuate as the fire torched trees, homes and cars overnight. Fanned by gale-force winds, firefighters say flames had reached the deepest into the capital for more than 2 decades. Around 700 firefighters and volunteers, 190 fire engines and 33 water-bombing aircraft have been battling the blaze that broke out on Sunday afternoon, 20 miles north of Athens. France, Italy and the Czech Republic are expected to assist with aircraft and firefighters. Spain, Cyprus and Turkey have also offered to help, a Greek government official said. Some residents in the hilly and wooded outer areas of Athens, like Pandali, have stayed to try and protect their own properties.
It hurts. We have grown up in the forest. We feel great sadness and anger.
This man crashed his car as he tried to escape the flames.
I couldn't see. I hit a pine tree, and this is what happened.
Summers in Greece have long been marked by wildfires, but hotter, drier weather linked to climate change have made blazes more frequent and intense. Greece experienced its warmest winter on record and is on track for its hottest ever summer. Large areas of the country have seen little or no rain for months, and temperatures are forecast to reach over 100 degrees Fahrenheit later in the week.
We've submitted all our invoices and applications and estimates of what it's going to cost.
Rye, like many communities, has applied for FEMA's disaster assistance. The Seacoast community looking for help after January's catastrophic back-to-back storms. There are currently 13 open disasters in the state dating back to 2017 that have or plan to apply for federal assistance. Towns foot the bill for disaster repairs and then apply for those bills to be reimbursed. But last week, FEMA implemented its immediate needs funding, which dedicates resources only to life-saving and life-sustaining activities until the disaster relief fund can be replenished. Senator Maggie Hassan says, quote, "We need to come together on both sides of the aisle to replenish the disaster relief fund. This funding is not only critical to helping our communities bounce back from natural disasters, but also to resiliency programs that help better prepare for the impacts to our changing climate and prevent severe damage from occurring in the first place." Back in Rye, Walsh says they aren't concerned about the change in funds and says it's common to see time pass between disaster and funding, and is confident that Rye will get the money it's asked for.
In all my years and experience in Rye, when we've had federal disaster relief funds come, there is sometimes a delay, or there is sometimes you hear it's not coming and then you hear it's coming.
Now, a FEMA spokesperson told us this won't cancel the work being done on current projects, but it will pause money for those projects until the disaster relief fund can be replenished.
More Australians are working more hours than ever before, and yet unemployment is rising. New figures show people are being forced to head back to work to make ends meet. But there is a glimmer of hope tonight for mortgage holders.
From sorting to packing to trucking. Tonight across every state and territory, Australia Post are calling for casuals in the lead up to Christmas.
Well, once again, Santra's looking for a little bit of help this year.
3,000 jobs adding to a now record workforce.
Even in a very soft economy, we are still creating tens of thousands of new jobs. And it's a tribute to our workers and to our employers.
But new figures from the Bureau of Statistics show Australia's unemployment rising to 4.2% seasonally adjusted, the highest level since the Omicron summer.
Australians are working harder for less. This is a diabolical combination. High prices and low growth are a sign of a weak economy.
That's because with prices rising, more people are looking for work. For the first time, more than 10 million people are working full-time in Australia, a total of 7 million more hours worked than last month.
The biggest challenge we've got is actually getting workforce.
A new figure for the most jobs being created by any government in Australia's history.
The numbers in line with Reserve Bank expectations, reducing the chance of an interest rate rise so far without the mass redundancies that were feared. Rate cuts remain the ultimate form of cost of living relief for mortgage holders and renters, but other relief will come sooner. The average Australian with HECS will see $1,200 come off the bill, compensating for a spike in last year's indexing.
Which will wipe $3 billion of student debt for more than 3 million Australians.
The change permanently tying HECS increases to the lesser of inflation or wage rates now before the Parliament. Charles Croucher.
Victoria Police is preparing for the biggest protest since the turn of the millennium at a military expo in Melbourne. As many as 25,000 people are expected, stretching police resources to the limit.
It was violent. It was bloody. Premiers were trapped in cars. Protests on an even bigger scale are planned for next month.
There's no doubt that this will be a very significant police operation.
It could be really, really big.
From September 11 to 13, Melbourne Convention and Exhibition Centre will host Land Forces, an international military expo. Disrupt Land Forces is planning to protest, calling for 25,000 activists.
Come on down to Land Forces 2024, your one-stop genocide shop.
Disrupt Land Forces claims to have 40 groups committed. Victoria Police will pull hundreds of officers from country Victoria to keep watch, its most significant operation since the World Economic Forum in the year 2000, drawing on a tenth of the force, which will have a flow-on effect.
A lot of the basic police work and the routine police work and the responsive police work just won't be done. It'll be delayed.
Australia's terror alert level was elevated to probable last week, but Victoria Police says it doesn't have any intelligence to suggest the Land Forces event here is the target for terrorism.
If they come with an intent to disrupt, to confront, to assault, to impede, then we will deal swiftly with them.
When the word disrupt is in the protest group's name, it seems inevitable. Rory Campbell, 7
Secretary of State Antony Blinken is reportedly postponing a high-stakes trip to the Middle East amid uncertainty as Iran considers launching an attack against Israel. Blinken had been slated to travel to the region Tuesday ahead of talks planned for later this week, in which Qatar, Egypt, and the United States will present a plan to implement a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war.
But you can bet that Blinken will try to apply pressure on Israel to make concessions that it probably shouldn't make. Israel's already facing enormous pressure. Iran has said that it won't retaliate if there's a ceasefire agreement, so the two issues are linked. Hamas says that in order for there to be Hamas's participation in the ceasefire negotiations, there has to first be a ceasefire, which makes very little sense. But Israel cannot agree to that because it's Israel's military operations that forces Hamas to the table in the first place. Nor should Israel be afraid of an Iranian attack and let that dictate its negotiations. The last time Iran tried to strike Israel, it couldn't penetrate its defenses along with the United States' defenses, firing 300 missiles and attack drones, which did very little damage. Even if it fires more this time, it may do damage, but Israel's response would be so great that it's actually Iran that should fear Israel, not the other way around. And Israel is also making progress in the war against Hamas. It's slow. It's a very difficult task, and Israel probably has a lot to go, but it has been taking out top leaders. It has been eliminating terrorists pretty much daily, and it really needs to see the mission all the way through. So Israel should really resist any pressure from Blinken or anyone else to make any kind of concessions. The concessions that Hamas wants is it wants Israel to end the war with Hamas intact, which would only set up the prospect of another October 7th. It wants Israel to relinquish control of the Philadelphia corridor, which separates Gaza and Egypt. That Israel cannot do because it's too important a piece of property. It's where Hamas smuggles its weapons. It includes Rafah, where Hamas's last remnants are thought to be holed up, along with probably the remaining hostages. So Israel cannot and should not make any, there's no reason for Israel to make any concessions along those lines. And the United States, Blinken, President Biden, and Vice President Kamala Harris, who all are on board with pressuring Israel to do a premature ceasefire, should recognize that.
Sabrina, this spring you sent reinforcements to the Middle East, but that did not deter Iran from carrying out a major attack on Israel on April 13th. Why should this time be any different?
Well, Lucas, thanks for the question. I actually think you should take a step back and realize what we did accomplish on April 13th. Yes, Iran did attack Israel in an unprecedented manner, but I'll remind you that on that day, we shot out of the sky 90% of what they threw at Israel. And that was an incredibly intricate operation with the Israeli military, our military, and our partners and allies in the region. So while you can focus on the fact that Iran did launch that attack, I think it's incredibly important to remember what U.S. forces did that day and the fact that we will stand with Israel again and have said that very publicly and privately. So why, getting to your question of, what's to stop Iran doing it again? Well, Lucas, we demonstrated our air power on that day in quite a professional manner. And again, I'd point to the fact that, over 90% of what was shot towards Israel was taken down by either our forces or partner forces or Israeli forces. So if I were Iran, I'd be thinking about that. And as you've seen, we've removing the aid to the region. We've accelerated her movement into Central Command, and I'll just leave it at that.
So just to be clear, the message to Iran right now is if you launch another major attack, the U.S. and its allies will shoot down these missiles and drones. That's the message.
I don't think we've actually been delicate in our messaging to Iran. We've been very clear that if Israel is attacked, we will come to the defense of Israel. You saw us do that on April 13th. I'm kind of paraphrasing what you're saying there. We will do that again. Should Israel be attacked, we absolutely will come to Israel's defense.
Does part of that defense of Israel also include potential strikes inside Iran?
Yeah, so I'm just not going to go into any hypotheticals, Lucas, but I appreciate the question.